maybe the whole meeting to order. Give the taker, Joe, just leaves the invocation.
Father God, thank you for allowing us to come together. Help us to make the right decision. Keep the peace. God bless America. God bless Cass County. God bless Michigan. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. May we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Lee,
Here.
Commissioner Leyland,
Present.
Commissioner Marquetti. Here. Vice Chair Barrera,
Present.
Chair Jones.
Here.
Commissioner Howie,
present.
Commissioner Locke. Here. And Commissioner Lawrence.
Thank you. The floor is now open for public comments. Each speaker has a maximum of 3 minutes to address the board. When you approach the podium, please state your name for the record. Please do not address individual commissioners directly, and note there will not be any back and forth discussion between the board and the public. Once your time is up, kindly conclude your comments and take a seat. Do we have any public comments?
Hi, I'm Hillary Hunt. I am the new 4-H program coordinator for Cass County. I just wanted to come and introduce myself. I am from Lawton. I live on my family farm with my husband and my children. We're involved in 4-H in Van Buren County. I'm looking forward to working here in Cass County, looking forward to partnerships and programming. Right now I'm working on programming for this summer mainly so I can get my training underway here. I started about 3 weeks ago, so I'm just getting to meet everyone and getting to know everyone, and I'm really enjoying it so far. So I just wanted to come in and say hello. My door's open if you want to come in and see me.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard. Any other public comment?
Go ahead, Vanya. I'm sorry. If I may just stay right here. I just wanted to publicly thank the people that have pitched in and helped me with early voting. If you haven't heard, we began early voting on Saturday, and it's been a wild race to get things going, and some people have really stepped up big time to help us. Our maintenance department here at the county has been absolutely phenomenal. We have had pallets of heavy items delivered that normally Heather and I would have to haul around and unpack, and those men have done their best to do everything for us and not have us have to lift a finger, which is wonderful. A handful of local clerks have tried to assist us so that a lot of the burden, just to share some of that burden. Commissioner Marquetti this morning saw a call for help, and before 8:10 was on the phone doing what she could to help, and sometimes just that call for support was really nice. My staff has been phenomenal. They know that the way to keep me sane is by food, so sometimes they just bring snacks in, and that always keeps me very happy. Just yesterday, our sheriff and undersheriff each volunteered separate days. They are going to make lunch for our election inspectors.
Oh, nice.
And that is a great way to keep people volunteering, even though they do get paid. You always know the precincts that have really good food throughout the county because they have a nice stash of election inspectors. So thank you, Sheriff and Undersheriff. So that's all. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. We really, really appreciate it.
Very nice.
You're doing a great job, Monica. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think there's going to be a presentation tonight about wages and compensation packages. And I just wanted to say that, to emphasize that all of us electeds want the same thing, and I think we want the same thing that you all want, and that is to attract and retain high-quality staff to provide the best possible service to our citizens. and to be creative and offer flexible compensation packages to be competitive. And so we're hoping, whatever the presentation is that Victor's going to do, which I have some ideas because he talked to us about it, but we would just like us all to put our heads together to be able to put together some kind of a proposal so that we could find out how could we offer some of these creative, compensation packages, because our workforce of today is different than it was yesterday, and it's going to be different in 6 months, and we want to make sure that we're keeping up with things. And we know that there's legal challenges, et cetera, that need to be addressed when you offer compensation, but we're hoping that maybe, our county could be on the forefront of doing some creative things. Because, for example, some folks want retirement benefits, which we know we've spent a lot of time talking about that in our county, but some folks who are younger don't. They want more money now. So, it would be really great if we could look at some of those things and talk about those things as a group, but like kind of fast track that discussion, because we want to stay competitive and we don't constantly want to be a revolving door for some of these areas that we find that happening. And I think the way to do it is if we all work together to ensure that we're doing those things, because compensation packages have to change over time. How people were paid when I first became a lawyer is totally different now in law firms, so we have to be changing with the times. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I know Victor's doing his own presentation, but the electeds and I all talked, and we just wanted to indicate that we all support making sure that we have competitive and creative compensation packages. Thank you.
I do have a question that we can do, even though we don't have back and forth. According to Robert's rules, I can ask you for clarification. So for clarification, are you saying that in addition to Victor's presentation, or is it going to be after or something separate from his? What do you all mean by working together?
Well, I think he's going to make some proposals, and so since we're not going to have elected official reports tonight, I wanted to just voice my support for some of his propositions and to say that we would like to all work together on this topic, because we think it's important. And, we did an RFP for a class comp study. Now it's quite a ways in the past. There's other ways we could do. We could do an RFP to find out some total compensation. It's not just about the money, it's about the whole compensation package. And there are businesses and government sector that are doing creative compensation packages, and we would like to explore being able to do that. So,
Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of great points, and since this is on our agenda for tonight, we're going to hold the discussion once we get to the
Okay, great.
agenda.
I'm sorry, I was just
Thank you,
trying to
ma'am.
answer what he asked. So.
Absolutely.
I was just going to ask if she was referring to item F.
Were you referring to item F?
I'm referring to item I.
Okay, I got you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I should have clarified that.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Will we be able then to give input on item number F, or should we be bringing it to this public comment?
Really, what I'd like to see with any discussion point under new business is anybody that feels free to speak has the opportunity to do so. So once we get to those agenda items, if you have something you want to say, please do so.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other public comment?
Good evening. I am the Chief Deputy Treasurer here for Cass County, and I wanted to ask to just kind of pose some questions with regards to the policy proposal for salaries for chief deputies that's on the agenda for tonight. And the questions that I do have, one is, what about the agreement that was adopted for non-union employees that transitioned from the DB to the DC that the Board of Commissioners approved in July of 2022 regarding the salaries? Will this new policy supersede that agreement, or will that agreement stand? And was that taken into consideration when this policy was drafted? My second question is, was there any communication with the elected officials regarding this policy before it was drafted? Because I'm sure they could have provided some very valuable input with regards to the verbiage, the language, the recommendations that are in the recommendations. And then one thing that is concerning to me, that's the verbiage that's in the drafted policy, is that our salaries could be decreased. And I'm trying to figure out, is there some sort of an example that can be given that would merit such a decision? it makes absolutely no sense to me to give an annual raise and then at some point come back and take that away from an employee. So those are my questions, my concerns with this whole policy that was written and adopted or drafted, that this is a prime example of the consensus that seems to be going on through the county, where there's no communication. It creates a contentious work environment, and we should do better. Communication should be had with those people that are going to be impacted by policies if you're wanting to adopt or draft a policy. And so those are my concerns for tonight. Thank you for giving me the time to speak.
Thank you for coming, absolutely. Are there any other public comments?
Just a reminder, the next Saturday is the last day for the rabies clinic and animal control from 9 o'clock to 1 in the afternoon. They've held 2 prior clinics, so this will be the final one that they'll be giving this year. But also you have to remember, you got to get your dog's license by the end of the month. So if you have any new dog owners out there, your dog licenses have to be obtained by the end of February. And also last meeting I reported about dispatch going through the lien audit, and they passed with flying colors. So we're really proud that they did that as well. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff.
I just wanted to remind folks that the SISMA annual meeting is tomorrow at the Pokagon Center. Get with me if you need information about the time or directions. And the backyard bird count starts tomorrow through 16th to the 19th, I believe. And also get with me if you want some more details about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Hearing none. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to remove from tonight's agenda F, elected officials and chief deputy salary policy, and I would like to send that back, have that sent back to the policy committee. And we will be discussing that on March 14th. The policy committee meets at 2 o'clock, and please come.
We don't need to vote on that, do we? We just go ahead and strike it from the agenda.
Would that satisfy the questions that were asked today
I hope so.
at that meeting?
Yes, absolutely. We will have a big discussion.
And
on
with this taking it off, would that affect anything that was brought up during public comments negatively? But I don't think so.
No.
Because it's not,
No.
nothing's gonna be happening.
That's right. It's not going to be voted on tonight or anything like that.
And when is that next meeting?
The next meeting is March 14th, and it's at 2 o'clock. Am I right? 2 o'clock?
So any elected official or employee can come to that to be involved. All right, that's great.
Thank you.
That eliminates some of my notes.
Very good, thank you. Next, we'll need the approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move for the approval of the agenda with the deletion of F.
Second.
The agenda has been moved and supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, and the agenda has been approved.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
I move to approve the January 18th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes. I'll support.
The minutes have been moved and supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. The finance report is included in the packet. Does any member of the board have any questions for administration? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on. We have no unfinished business tonight. We are going under new business. Someone please correct me if I'm wrong, but with new items now, we will discuss and vote on each item individually. Is that right? Each item will need a motion, a second, and a vote to move it along to the business meeting for an official vote. Are there any questions on that? All right, so we're gonna move right into our new business. The first item under new business, Board of Commissioner bylaws, rules and procedure. Administrator Newton, do you have anything you want to discuss on that?
I would just say, I think this has been a long process. I think we actually started work on this back towards the end of '22.
Yes, we did.
And there's been a lot of revisions that have gone into it. Obviously, we worked through this at the workshop. And then all those changes to that point have been incorporated here. This would replace the existing rules of procedure. And I think it's been vetted well, and I think it will be a good replacement.
I agree. This is an item that we have talked about here before. We've had workshops on this item before. Does anyone have any questions or concerns regarding this?
No.
I'll make the motion to move it on.
Support.
Motion has been moved and supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion is approved. Next item, resolution designating one-year term for chair. Again, Administrator Newton, do you have anything to add to this?
This also came out of the workshop, and it was, looking at the Board of Commissioners' bylaws and rules of procedure, was a note that, the state law requires that terms be 2 years for chair unless a resolution is adopted reducing them to 1 year. We've obviously had it in our rules of procedure. I believe there was a resolution, but we've had trouble locating it because it was like 40-some years ago, I think, probably. So the cleanest way to do it was to prepare a new resolution, have that, put that into effect on an annual basis, and then essentially have the last section is, be it further resolved that all previous resolutions and parts of resolutions that may conflict with this resolution are repealed. So essentially, takes the place of whatever may have been there before, so there's no real need to relocate that. It just, from this point forward, here's how it's gonna work.
Yeah, very good. And I do remember discussing this before. Is everyone familiar with the discussion that we had at the workshop?
Yep.
All right, if there are no further questions, I entertain a motion to move this item to the BOC meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I do
Please.
have a question. It's a second whereas Public Act 392 of 2000 took effect on January 4th, 2021. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was Public Act 392, but it didn't actually take effect until the following year.
Which would have been
2001.
2001.
Or, excuse me, sorry. You're right. I think that, my fault. I misunderstood you. Yes, I think it should be corrected to 2001. You're right. Definitely not 2021.
Thank you. That's all for me.
Sure, so we'll just correct that at the BOC meeting,
Yeah, I'll
right?
make sure the as revised comes to the regular meeting. My
Thank
fault.
you.
I apologize.
No. I've done way worse than that.
Is there any other discussion on this item? Once again, I'll support a motion to move this along to the BOC meeting.
I'll make that motion.
I'll support.
Motion has been moved and supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is approved. Next up, we have the election inspector salary. Ms. Michael?
Yes, I let you all know that I would be coming back requesting funding for elections. I'm doing my best not to ask for a ton of money, so at this point, the only immediate need is for funding for election inspectors. In this fiscal year, we have the February presidential primary, which will be 100% reimbursed by the state, so we will get that money back.
That's good.
We have a May special election, which the schools will reimburse, and then we will have the August primary, which the county has to pay for. So that's the only thing that will actually come out of our budget. The state, I did apply for a grant, and the state had good intentions, but with the primary getting moved up, they have not been able to approve any of those grants or give us any monies, so I'm still waiting on those numbers. So in the meantime, I'm requesting $30,000 so we can at least get the election inspectors paid. I will keep you apprised of the status. I'm still hoping they'll give us monies, but this will at least allow us to pay our election inspectors.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Any questions?
No.
Do you know when you might hear something back on that follow-up?
No idea. The state is struggling about as bad as all of us local clerks.
I guess nothing new there.
No.
There are no further questions. I entertain a motion to move this to the BOC meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Support.
Motion has been moved and supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is approved. Next, we have the interlocal agreements for TIS services regarding the medical care facility and road commission. Commissioner Newton, would you like to speak on this?
Yes, I'll go, and then Jody, if you have anything to add, feel free. But this has been something that's been in the works for quite some time now as well. I think this probably dates back to fall of '22. We embarked upon a journey with both the road commission and the medical care facility on combining our IT services. Essentially, they were contracting services out to a third party. We held discussions about how we felt we could actually leverage county resources to assist them in a more cost-effective way. Part of the challenge, though, was that both entities didn't really have the network infrastructure and the equipment and things for us to be able to do that in the right way. So we worked with the road commission and the medical care facility on kind of purchasing equipment, making changes to be able to allow us to do help desk support, network support, IT security training, those sorts of things. It was actually just recently in the last month or two, we finally were able to get everything in place. So we approached the IT services agreements as an interlocal agreement, very similar to what we did with the kind of communications and marketing as well as facilities. The difference being that we kind of looked at this more like the marketing agreement, being more of a flat fee. We didn't really think it made a lot of sense to do time and materials, because that can fluctuate a lot, and we felt that, we could be, most IT agreements are gonna be like that. You pay an annual set amount or a monthly amount, and then you utilize the service as you need. The challenge, of course, is that the needs of the entities are different. So medical care has, roughly 180 employees. There are 24/7 operations. Something goes down at 3 a.m., that could be really critical.
Yeah.
The road commission is generally there from, maybe about 7 in the morning to 5, and there really is not a lot of support going on after that. So we had to look at how do we approach that. So, we essentially looked at the costs of help desk and kind of anticipated expenditures to be able to support the medical care facility, and then came up with the kind of a matrix of looking at, a weighted average of number of employees, service hours that we would be required to fulfill, and then the number of computers and systems we're supporting, and then kind of weighted that to what the total cost was for medical care. So at the end, both agreements, if adopted by the county and those local units, would bring approximately $78,900 in additional revenues to the county to help offset the cost of providing those services, as well as potential upgrades for, say, systems we need to be able to facilitate that more effectively. So, say a work order system, for example, as we get to a point where we're servicing 300 employees across multiple different entities, email isn't always as effective. So this would help offset the cost to roll out a more formal service ticket system that we can manage and utilize. And so that actually has the benefit of not only helping our partners in this, but also the county as well. So I think it's a really good opportunity for all of us to gain a lot.
Thank you. I know I have a couple questions on this, but if anyone else has questions, please go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, I'll wait.
My only question is regarding insurance in both of the potential contracts. Does our current liability insurance provide coverage for doing this, or are we pulling separate policies for each of the potential agreements?
I think essentially this mirrors the language we've used before. And I think our current workers' compensation and employer liability policies should apply in these cases as well.
Can we just double check on that before the next meeting?
Absolutely.
I did check and we are covered.
Okay.
Perfect.
There we go.
Perfect. Who wrote these interlocal agreements? Because I thought they were, I read them, and I thought they were very well done. I thought they covered everything very well.
Yeah, I think it's a collaboration, right?
Yeah.
We had kind of a base we had used from before. Jody put a lot of work into
Yeah.
it, we
Good
worked
job, you
together on
guys.
it, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's all I.
Anyone else? I was just curious when I was looking over this, how was the estimated cost savings of $78,900 calculated?
Yeah, essentially, the 78,900 is, what that is the medical care facility contract would carry a monthly cost of $5,000 a month that they would pay to the county for the services to be provided. Obviously, Exhibit A goes over those things. And then the cost for the road commission was $15.75, again, based on that kind of
Yeah.
weighted average that we utilized.
I
I think it
can
was
see
like
that.
0.38 or 0.31, something like that. So you take basically the $15.75 a month times 12 months plus the $5,000 times 12 months, that's where that $78.90 comes from. It's just the annualized revenues of both agreements.
The follow-up question I have on that is, does the current IT department have the capacity to manage the additional duties outlined in the agreement without requiring an increase in staffing, which could potentially offset the cost savings anticipated?
Well, that's a good question. I think part of the idea is that I don't think these agreements are necessarily constructed with the intention of the county making money, right? I mean, obviously, the idea is to, essentially at least break even. Maybe if there's some additional, synergies, things like that, to have that happen. I mean, I think we do feel pretty confident that a lot of the support we're talking about here has actually been ongoing over the last month or two, I believe. I mean, I can't say that there may not be opportunities for us to look at whether, potentially adding somebody where these costs would cover that would be helpful. But I don't know that I'm necessarily in a position to say right now, until we get a little further into this, do we necessarily anticipate that? I think the plan with we set the cost was that however we approached it, we wouldn't have, a situation where the county was expending more funding than what it would cost to support these. And that's kind of how we structured these, was that if we did have to add somebody, we could absorb that cost as well.
I will add to that just a little bit, is I think the cost savings to the county, it comes out in more than just employees or the amount of people that it takes to support the systems. And the case in point is the ransomware attack, and how much that would have cost the county if the county IT personnel wasn't taken care of and remediating that situation. Like, those costs would have been exponential compared to what they actually had to pay. So that, I think, kind of needs to be taken in consideration when we talk about IT services and how broad they are, and that we're involved in everything across the county and every department. And bringing on these partners, what a benefit it is to them, but it's a benefit to the county too on a lot of different levels, outside of just support.
That's a really great point. Thank you for bringing that up.
That is a great point. What I'd like to do, and I don't know if this was done, if there was an actual time study done on the services.
What was that, sorry?
A time study done between the services and just exactly how much time is involved with this. And it would give you a better idea if you're gonna have to hire someone else, and if there's an actual, what the actual cost really is. And you did make the statement that the county's not gonna make any money on this. We don't wanna lose money. So
No, absolutely not.
it's a double-edged sword, because what Jody was saying, I think it was Jody back there, that's a fantastic thing, but I feel like myself, I would like to see a time study done.
Okay. Well, and I think like with the work order system we're talking about, and I think that plays kind of into it, is that it would allow us to be able to track what requests come in from whether it's within the county, outside the county, and be able to kind of allocate time, resources spent, things like that, and be able to get a more accurate, measurement. The other thing is with these agreements, they were structured to be one-year agreements intentionally, with the idea that that one-year timing gives us a chance to be able to figure out how did it work, how did this all go, so that we could have a little more confidence. If they needed to be adjusted for whatever reason, we can certainly make that case to the partners and say, hey, this is what we're seeing cost-wise, this is why we need to make a change. But, it's kind of a chicken-egg sort of a problem in that, until we actually really get into it, it's hard for us to be able to necessarily know this is exactly how many hours it's going to take. And some things are unpredictable, right? Like, we would not be able to predict if somebody's going to have a ransomware attack or something like that. It's just, we hope and do our best to kind of prepare and train for that. But, if it happens, obviously, that would potentially have an impact on resources and time too.
And I will say too, like, the county is if you think about what they were paying the medical care facility and the road commission beforehand, like there's a savings there that you aren't seeing in the direct amount that they're paying back into the services for county IT. You know what I mean? So like there's that, there's also, it's really hard to do a time study on IT services because we manage things in a different way. All of our antivirus for all of the facilities is in one spot now. It reduces those silos, so there's savings in regards to those types of things. So when you're looking at things like firewalls, we all have the same firewall now, so that we're managing things centrally. So there's savings in terms of time, but it's really hard to gauge that and to actually say it's an hour. You know, like it's almost impossible to kind of put it in that context. So in terms of savings, there's a lot going on, and they're also getting better protection and, you know, the training that's required and the things that we're able to provide at the county level that they weren't getting from their other service providers.
Yeah.
So when you put that into perspective, I think that that's, you know, it's really hard to gauge the benefit and the true savings involved with that.
Yeah, that's part of the idea too, right, is that with the medical care facility and the road commission both, I mean, the idea would be that they're also seeing a savings versus going out to a third-party provider. And then I think this is way longer term, right, but if we go down this road and things are successful, I know that, you know, there are local municipalities, things like that, that do contract out with third parties. There could be avenues to see this expand even further, potentially. I mean, obviously, part of the idea is like, let's start with, you know, 2 of our partners that we could work with here, see how this all works. And, you know, maybe again, that's 10 years down the line, but, you know, there are avenues like that where certain services like this are scalable.
Right.
And could be expanded to a lot more, you know, partners if it makes sense for both them and the county, obviously.
Yeah, it does sound like there's a lot of value here that we have to explore. Does anyone have any other questions or concerns that they want to address on this subject? Let's say now between this meeting and the following meeting, if there was something that came up, who should we contact directly?
Yeah, I mean, feel free to reach out to me and then I can certainly coordinate with Jody to get an answer back for you.
Okay, but I do encourage anyone to speak up if they have anything they want to talk on this subject. If there are no further questions, I entertain a motion to move this item to the BOC meeting.
I so move.
Second.
Motion has been moved and supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, the motion is approved. Next up, we have the mileage reimbursement policy. Does anyone from the policy committee wish to speak on this? Or Administrator Newton, anyone that wants to speak on it?
If anybody from the committee wants to, sure, or I can add a couple things.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so mileage reimbursement, part of the reason why we have this is mileage reimbursement was actually contained in a lot of different places. So there's items in a handbook, there were a policy for commissioners that was essentially kind of adapted to work for employees, that we kind of set certain rates there and here's how we're gonna do it. But we really didn't have anything formal in terms of an actual policy that was, here's how we approach mileage reimbursement. So we've been looking at kind of travel and that sort of, you know, kind of the whole thing of, you know, traveling and hotels, you know, all kinds of different things, trainings. But we decided to break these up into smaller parts. So mileage was the first one that made a lot of sense. Mileage rates, essentially, we're just clarifying that, you know, General Services Administration sets those rates, that's what we would follow. So annually, they say, you know, the average rate is, you know, the rate for reimbursement is 68 cents, or, you know, per mile, or, you know, 52.5, or whatever it is, that's the rate we use. One thing that was a bit ambiguous was how you calculated distance. So is it from somebody's home? Is it from work? Well, it might depend on where you're going from, right? So the idea with that was essentially looking at where is the employee driving from. So if somebody is, you know, a half hour, you know, closer, and I'm leaving from my house, well, then the reimbursement would be from where I'm driving from, not necessarily automatically from the county. So it's providing a little more flexibility there and, you know, clarifying that issue. It doesn't require this, but it, you know, encourages folks to take the most efficient routes that they can, utilizing county-owned vehicles where it's possible, carpooling with colleagues where that can happen. There's a reimbursement form that is utilized in these cases, and it allows for exceptions. So essentially, department heads, elected officials are able to, you know, look at exceptions on a case-by-case basis, and somebody says, hey, here's the situation and why I need to be reimbursed differently for this, or why my travel was this way, and it's incumbent upon those offices to say, yep, this meets the requirement. So elected official, the department supervisor will review and approve those exceptions. There is no approval required on, the end of administration. Essentially, we're just notified, hey, this is what happened and this is why this mileage is set up this way. So that's actually managed at the department or office level. They, have a preset budget for how that works, and they manage that budget.
Very good.
And it was done that way on purpose, like they
Yes.
talked with elected officials and wanted to make sure
Yeah.
that they could have that authority.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have the final say in that.
Does anyone have any questions? I know I have one at least, but just keep in mind that the questions that I ask are just so that we get clarity on some of this information and ensure that everyone has the same information in front of them. The question here is, how will the mileage reimbursement policy impact the existing practices and procedures within the county, particularly regarding the use of county-owned vehicles and reimbursement rates?
I think in terms of reimbursement rates, it doesn't really change anything. Essentially, we operate now with utilizing the GSA rate that's already set, so that doesn't change much. With county-owned vehicles, I think it varies from department to department or office to office. I guess I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think like the sheriff, for example, trainees in the academy utilize, sheriff department-owned vehicles for their travel back and forth to help cut down on mileage reimbursement costs. We've worked a couple different times over the last year with sheriff on utilizing some of the, a training vehicle and, having that available instead of somebody driving their own cars, especially for, longer trips, things like that. So, and I think it's still case by case, a lot of it's subject to, do we have a car that's available? I think the bigger thing is it's also scalable in the sense that, in the future, if the county decided we wanted to purchase a vehicle that was more for these purposes, things like that, the policy can actually accommodate that well. It's not requiring that, it's really making it available. Like, are these resources available? If so, try to exhaust them. If not, feel free to drive your car, that kind of a thing.
And Commissioner Lee, you state that you guys work with the elected officials on this? Very good.
Yeah, and then this is just to provide more clarity than what we had previously. That's what this is for. This is just to give more clarity, more definition, basically.
Sure.
Yeah.
Jennifer, did you have something?
I was just gonna say, I think it was just a talked about practice that it was from work to the location you were going, and sometimes maybe people weren't coming to work, and maybe they're an hour away from here, and it was a much shorter trip, so
Yeah.
we also don't want people making money off of travel that really wasn't done either, so we really tried to make it about like what they were actually traveling. So that was just a point to try and clear up a little bit and make it fair for both sides.
Great, thank you. If there are no further questions, I entertain a motion to move this to the DOC meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion has been moved and supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is approved.
G.
We strike F, yep. So fiscal year '24 budget amendments. Jen or Matt, do you guys have anything you want to add to this?
I know that the soil erosion stuff is already approved, I just wanted to make it a little bit more formal. The first item for the MAACS fees, this year was done a little bit different where we pay the full cost and then we get a partial reimbursement coming back, so rather than just having expenditures, we need to have revenue and expenditures, and we need to make those expenditures go up at the same time we make the revenues go up, and they'll just offset each other, so that's not really for fund balance.
Yeah.
And then the marine law enforcement grant, that was a grant that we had last year, not all of the money was spent. We didn't know at the time when budget was being done how much might be left on that grant to spend. So this is just the remaining money that needs to be spent from that grant. So I know that the sheriff's department is trying to use up those funds and kind of close that grant out. So that's really what that's coming from.
Very good. Does anyone have any questions for her? If there are no further questions, I entertain a motion to move this to the BOC meeting.
I support it. I make a motion.
I'll support. Motion has been moved and supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion is approved. Medical examiner, Administrator Newton or Sheriff Benke, anyone wish to speak on it?
I'm happy to talk unless you want.
I'd rather have the sheriff talk. I'm tired of hearing you, Matt. You've been talking too much. Please, Sheriff. That's not, he knows what I'm talking about. That's not a hit on Matt.
I'm totally good.
Relax, relax, everybody.
I need to get steps in anyways.
Yeah.
So the medical examiner, Dr. DeYoung, who was here a few months ago reporting on the medical examiner's office, has resigned as your county medical examiner. Not because she didn't like it, she got a better job opportunity. She's gonna be the head or the dean of osteopathic medicine at Michigan State University. So she's moved on from the medical examiner.
Whoa.
Whoa. White, yes.
Easy.
But that's also her alma mater. So there's been a change of the person who's going to be in charge of the medical examiner's office. And I can't remember his name right now, Matt.
Patrick Hansbach.
Yeah. So he's taking over. So we need, you as the county board have to appoint him as your medical examiner. And so that's basically what's happening here. And we actually had the medical examiner chief investigator in our law advisory meeting today at the sheriff's office with all the other departments to get on that basis. But that's basically what this is all about. Is Dr. DeYoung is moving on, and we have a new medical examiner, but everything else is the same.
That's good.
I just want to make a comment, if I may. Their credentials. Really.
Half the packet.
Dr. DeYoung's actually a nationally respected forensic medical.
Yes, and you can see that, very impressive.
And her replacement's right there with him, forensic pathologist, I should say.
It was nice to have that information.
Yeah, it was, it was. Took me a while to get through.
Yes.
It was fun.
Thanks, Sheriff. I moved it, we moved the medical examiner forward.
Second. Motion has been moved and supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it, the motion is approved. Next on the agenda is prosecutor's office, wages and salary discussion. Prosecutor?
Thank you. Let me just pull a couple items out and we'll get started.
Oh, we have a PowerPoint.
We do.
Did you do that, Victor?
I did. That's why it'll be a little bit substandard, Roseanne. But,
I got that.
just one moment. Joe, did the pointer, is that
Right there.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate very much the chance to meet and talk a little bit about wages, salaries, and staffing, about my office, and really, there's also going to be some discussion about the county as a whole and so forth. And I know that there had been some discussion earlier about me making this presentation at a retreat, but I think obviously that didn't work at that time, so I appreciate the chance here today. And we'll try to move through this fairly quickly, but we'll probably be about 15 minutes with it, just for a forewarning. So if anybody needs to get popcorn or anything like that, go right ahead. And Mary Foster, my chief assistant, will also participate and give a little bit of the presentation as well. So clearly, this is something that's very much on the radar of everybody. And again, you heard this a little bit earlier today, but I want to repeat it. This came from Judge Beeler. I think these are three good things to consider in regard to this discussion. One is that I think everyone in this room, including certainly you guys as elected officials and the other elected officials in the county, these are things that we want, particularly the first two. The third one is a little bit new, but the attract and retain high-quality staff, provide the best services possible to our citizens, and also, too, I think in this day and age, as the judge indicated, we need to explore creative and flexible compensation packages in order to be competitive. And this is a new area, but again, I think there's some potential there. So, but in regard to obviously my office, again, much like what's going on in the state and the nation, I do have urgent staffing issues in my office. I know that this is a law enforcement problem in general that I'll get into, but obviously, certainly it is my office. And it is nationwide. It's not just in Cass County. It's not just in Michigan. It's around the country. New York Times reported hundreds of prosecutors leaving their jobs. This is just the sad reality, as we'll get into a little bit of what's going on. In Wisconsin, the district attorney's offices there are struggling to hire prosecutors. Literally, they discussed it as possibly being a constitutional crisis. Offices having 0 or 1 or none in their office to do the job of a prosecutor. Detroit News here locally in October of last year, Michigan prosecutors, there was a report was put out, an article that indicated prosecutors are facing staffing crises with repercussions for justice. I think as we have this discussion, as we go through this information, one thing that's very important to remember is the constitutional mandate in Michigan's Constitution. Right at the very beginning, Article 1, Section 1 says, government is instituted for the people's equal benefit, security, and protection. And security and protection, again, that's the first thing they talk about other than the equal benefit in our Constitution. Security and protection is a top priority for the citizens of Cass County, and having been an elected official for 21 years now, it'll be 21 years in May, I think that, again, that probably is the top priority of the citizens of this community, as it is in most communities. People want to be safe. They want public safety. And that certainly this isn't something that's esoteric or theoretical. It's real life stuff. You know, we deal with murder, we deal with rape, we deal with drugs, child molestations. Again, very real stuff. I just think about what happened this week in our county alone. 3 things that were on the agenda. Just the tip of the iceberg of what we dealt with this week. A bank robbery that was set for trial this week. We also had set a case in which an individual was shot 5 times in the stomach, and the perpetrator is charged with assault with intent to murder. These happened in your community. Another thing that happened in the south end of the community a little while ago that came up this week, we have a major drug case, over 1 kilo of cocaine, a transaction that occurred in the south end of the county. And one of our primary witnesses was just executed and murdered in Elkhart, Indiana. Again, this stuff is not just stuff you read in a book. This isn't something that is on a movie. This happens in our community, and it's as real as it gets. So who provides that security and protection for you and for your families and for your neighbors and your friends? Obviously, it's the police. More specifically, the bulk of that in our county is the sheriff's department, and obviously the prosecutor's office, because we handle and take these cases through the system. But we're certainly not alone in doing that. We have to have the courts. That's integrally important to make sure that the functions of law enforcement occur, and we can't do it without other important partners such as the county clerk. The clerk, if we don't have a county clerk, our court system doesn't run. If we don't have a treasurer, our bills don't get paid, and the system grinds to a halt. So again, all these links are important in the system. You've heard obviously from the sheriff, including I think very recently, including one of his deputies that talked about some of the problems that they have with staffings, with their very real concerns. And again, we certainly have similar problems in the prosecutor's office. And I want to share a little bit of that with you in a little bit more detail here today. For much of the last 2 years, including currently, we have been down 40% of our licensed attorney staff in the office. And that is something that is wearing and it's taxing, and it creates stress and an inability to get done everything that needs to be done in a prosecutor's office. We also, in the last 2 years, that same time period, we've had a 100% turnover in our staff. And Mary's going to talk a little bit about that, the burden it puts on the senior attorneys in the office, trying to train and retrain and once again, train the people in the office so that we can do the work of the people. As I said, it's not just a Cass County problem, it's not just a national problem, it's the entire state of Michigan. There's 83 counties. In 2023, 44 of the offices were looking for assistant prosecutors. That was at one time, and there's probably was more than that, because if you go over the course of a whole year, occasionally some offices do get those filled. And I've been doing this for 41 years, and for I'd say probably 35 of those 41 years, in the 83 counties, there would be maybe 3, 4, maybe 5 offices looking for assistant prosecutors. But it's just a huge problem that we're having right now, being able to staff our offices. So why is this happening? There's really, I think, three primary reasons, and you'll see that in the articles. I've got at least one article that I'll provide you at the end of this session. But again, and they talk about these things as well. Declining law school enrollment. It's gone down about 10% nationwide, and that creates a void when it comes to having lawyers to fill these positions. Again, and it drives up the cost of doing business. The defund the police movement, that certainly has hit police primarily, but it's also hit prosecutors heavily too, because kids in law school are no longer taking the criminal law cases. They're no longer interested in this type of line of work. But also wages and salaries, the sad reality and just the clear reality is they are no longer competitive. And it's a crisis that's around the corner here in Cass County. And really, even more precisely, it's right next door. Let me explain a little bit. St. Joe County, a county very similar to us in size, in population, the type of crime, the number of assistant prosecutors. They are down to one assistant prosecutor in their office. I've got an article that I'll, again, give you at the conclusion of this presentation. And I really encourage you, it's right at the top of a modest stack of some information. I really encourage you to read it, because that is what is coming to Cass County if we don't address this and we don't get ahead of this curve, which is a very, very sharp and dangerous curve. And I think we can do it, as I'll explain and so forth. But bad things will happen if we don't. They normally have 4 assistant prosecutors. 3 of them are gone. And as I talked to the prosecutor there, Dave Marvin, who's a good man, he's newer at it. I've been doing it for 21 years. He's been doing it for about 2 years now. But he says they're getting no applications. And this is similar to I talked about earlier. Oftentimes in the last 2 years, we've been down at least 2 attorneys, 40%. There was one period of time where we had 6 months, 2 openings, and we had no applicants whatsoever for those positions. We were able to, fortunately, I was able to go out and recruit someone, and we had one young lady graduate from law school, and so we were able to fill those positions. But now again, because our wages aren't keeping up, we're down 2 licensed attorneys. The market has changed dramatically, and we just have to come to the realization that that's the reality. That's the new normal that we're dealing with. Bottom line, we can't get, much less keep assistant prosecutors for what we are currently paying them. And this is a problem that is not going to go away. This is our competition, because people in Southwest Michigan are who we compete against directly to get people to come here. We've got, obviously, these are the 5 primary counties: Berrien, Allegan, Van Buren, Kalamazoo, and St. Joe. In Cass County, the range is $57,000 to $82,000 for an assistant prosecutor from bottom to top. And again, too, I know that there's people in this room that certainly can say that that's lower than what it is in many other fields with even less education. And again, this sheet is something that I'll provide you in the packet as well, too. But if you look at Cass County, it's at rock bottom there when it comes to compensation for its assistant prosecutors. We're a little bit ahead of St. Joe in the minimum, that $57,000 versus their $54,000. But when you get to the top end, we're at $82,000, and there's some offices that are as high as $150,000 for their top end assistant prosecutors. This is not even considering their chief assistants. That top line from Kalamazoo, again, if you're a supervisor there, you can actually get $151,000, which is above even the $134,000, which is, again, about, if my math is correct, is over $50,000 higher than what ours is. Our top end is even very close to what their bottom end salary is. So when we go, I was just at a job fair at Michigan State recently, and we had a young attorney who looked like she was interested in working for our office. But then she saw another office on the other side of the state, talked to them that were their starting pay. Our starting pay is $57,000. Their starting pay is $90,000. It gets even worse when you compare us to the indigent defense attorneys, their annual wages, because of, again, the state money, that influx that's being paid in there in Chauffeur now. They get $100 an hour for a felony case, $140 for a capital offense case. If you calculate that out to a typical year of working 40, 50, 60 hours a year as an attorney, that's $180,000 to $250,000. That's far more, sometimes double, sometimes even triple what our packages are. And these numbers are not disputed by the defense attorneys. They've acknowledged that this is the money that they can potentially make in these situations. Want to talk a little bit, give Mary an opportunity to come up here and talk a little bit about the workload comparison, because sometimes you hear the thing, well, you know, a small county, the pay should be, demonstrably less, or things of that sort, or that, what is the comparison between our office and the public defenders and so forth. So Mary, if you'd like to come up here, and we'll give you a chance to maybe just talk about that a little bit. And as Mary's coming up here, I just want to say, Mary is really, we're very fortunate to have her. She worked 22 years in the 22 years in the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, which again is a large office, certainly one of the largest in the country, and she can give you some perspective as to the workload and things of that sort in regard to Cook County versus Cass County and other counties of that size.
Well, I appreciate you guys taking the time to hear this. I'll make it quick because I know this is a longer presentation, but so when I started in this office a year and a half ago, every attorney that's been in the office is now gone. And what we have now is myself, I'm the most senior attorney, and I'm not including Victor in this analysis. I'm the most senior attorney, and Jason Ronnie is the second most senior attorney, and he does have experience, and we're grateful for that. Our two other attorneys are Rosemary, who is a bar taker, so she's not licensed, and she therefore cannot work in court, and Aiden, who has a year and a half of experience as an attorney. So Jason and I are running circuit and district court. So we have two attorneys dealing with all the felonies and all the misdemeanors for Cass County. Aiden works family court, which is a full-time job because it's not only family court, which is the delinquency, but it's also the abuse and neglect cases. So she's very much busy with that. And just to put it in perspective of resources, there are 4 public defenders working district and misdemeanor court in Cass County. We have 2 prosecutors. We are getting outmanned at every turn. We are responsible for all the evidence in the case. We are responsible, and we have above and beyond duties than what the public defenders have. We do search warrants. We look at every case presented to us for charging, which takes time, which means we have to view the body cams and the evidence, and then we decide if we approve those cases and they move on to court. And then once they're in court, we're the ones talking to the victims, prepping the witnesses, getting the evidence together, and then running the court calls and the trials. So as you can see, the 4-to-2 ratio of what we have with the public defenders is we're getting outmanned, and they're basically able to, it's really not a great situation to have the public defenders have a better feel for the case than the prosecutors do because they just have more time to spend on each and every case. So, and that's in comparison with the other counties, surrounding. The larger counties may have larger caseloads, but they also have larger amounts of attorneys, and they have specialty attorneys. They have appellate attorneys in Kalamazoo County and Berrien County. We don't. We all have appeals that we are writing on the weekends that we don't have time to do during the week. In addition, we also deal with, they have specialty ASAs that deal with homicide, sex abuse, sex cases, DV. We don't. I deal mostly with all the sex cases and all the DV cases, but I also run the circuit court call as well with Jason and the misdemeanor court call. So all that time that should be spent on these cases, these very important cases, we just don't have. So we are at a point right now, because we really have 3 licensed attorneys, that we are struggling at times to handle or cover the court calls. We just don't have the bodies to fill the courtrooms. If we have a probate matter, if we have a delinquency matter, if we have an abuse and neglect in a circuit and a district court, that's 5 courts going on at one time. We have 3 attorneys. We cannot cover these calls. And not only is it making it almost impossible to adequately cover the calls, it's making it impossible to give the time and the attention that these cases deserve. Victor alluded to or made reference to Prosecutor Marvin and the issues he's facing in our neighboring county. And he actually wrote a letter to his commissioners, which I know Victor's going to speak on. And I just implore you to read the letter that he wrote to his commissioners, because it is a very realistic situation that we are going to be facing soon here in Cass County. And so with that, again, I thank you for your time and for your consideration and listening to me and Victor in this matter. Thank you.
You know, as Mary mentioned, again, we are very fortunate that we have two senior attorneys that work for me, that being Mary as well as Jason. But I also want to let you know that, again, the problem is also retention. You know, we had a good kid, Ryan Funk, who wanted to stay in the office. He was doing a good job. It provided stability so that Mary didn't have to be, you know, every time we get a new attorney, Mary and myself, we have to spend a lot of time training that person to some really complicated things that we deal with. Well, Ryan, ultimately, he didn't, the compensation wasn't sufficient, so he left. And so that again created the vacancy we have. And I will tell you, and this is just the truth. It happened this week, and I won't say which one, but one of my assistants came in and said, you know, Vic, I love working here, but I know I'm getting way underpaid. I could make a lot more money in a prosecutor's office elsewhere, and so forth. Said, I'm going to stick with you as long as I can, but again, this is just the reality. I'm not getting paid what I'm worth, and it brings me back to the Bible passage that is often said, you know, a laborer is worthy of his wages, and we have to realize we have to pay these assistant prosecutors the wages that they're worthy of. Let's see. We've Jody, I don't know if there we go, okay. So again, this is all not gloom and doom though. I think there are some solutions, and that's why, again, I appreciate the chance to talk here, because again, you know, we want to get ahead of that curve. We're already in an urgent situation, and we don't want to face a crisis, the cataclysmic crisis that, again, St. Joe County and some other counties have faced. So what are some of these solutions? And one of the solutions is not to compare us to other broken models like St. Joe County. And like Mary said, read that letter. And other counties that can't, that maybe have the same pay scales as we do, but can't hire people and can't sufficiently cover their courtrooms. That is not the model that we want to follow. The solution is to find a way to properly fund law enforcement. And also, as I'll talk about other parts of the county as well. I've got a potential solution that really takes two parallel tracks, and again, this has been a work in progress. I know I've talked to some of you about some aspects of this, and some of this is going to be a little bit more recent as well. But again, I am suggesting that we do two things. And one is that we have a class comp study, and I'll talk about that more in just a moment, and also a law enforcement millage, again, to help supply funding for the sheriff's office and the prosecutor's office, in essence, really to replace the CDET millage that we currently have. Class comp study, I think it's important that we be fair to all employees, because my office is not the only office that is suffering from issues about staffing and employment and pay and wages of their attorneys. So again, I think we want to try to, again, be equitable and fair to everybody involved. We've discussed the idea of a class comp study for well over a year. I think now is the time to do it, and I think it'd be important to fast track it. I know that it doesn't necessarily have to take a 2-year period. It can be something that can be fairly quick, and I think you know, if we would contract with somebody who could do it, we could set the time that we needed. I really think, as I think I have in another slide, try to get that done by November of this year, which I think is actually closer to 7 months. I think it's important that we do invest in our county and in our employees in doing this, because again, we are due, or probably overdue, to have this done. And as Judge Beeler mentioned, I think as we kind of roundtable this a little bit as elected officials, you know, we want to work with you obviously on this too, on this part of the parallel track, is that, you know, there are some flexible compensation options that can at least be considered and talked about. I know as a prosecutor, as the judge indicated, there are assistant prosecutors that will come in and work with us at the front end that don't really care about having a retirement plan. And they would rather have a little bit more money in their salary, and that's something that we can look at. I can also tell you at the other end of a person's career, I've got a number of attorneys, very good prosecutors that you know, say, man, your salary's too low. If you could get me more money, I'd work there. And I don't care about a retirement plan. I've already got that. You know, I don't need the health plan also too, because again, I've got that as well. So certainly I think that should be part of a class comp study. The other thing, again, the law enforcement millage. Again, I want to talk very quickly. I'll try to continue to move through this expeditiously. Lapeer County, we've got the mold already as to what we can do. Mary and I talked with the Lapeer County prosecutor, was at some extent here earlier this week. They had a bold mindset. They had some of the very same problems that we had. Had some similarities to Cass County, a small county, a little bit bigger, 88,000 people, strong law enforcement support, just as Cass County does. But they had the same problems, and their salaries were a bit higher than ours. but they were still unable to staff prosecutors, they were unable to staff the sheriff's office, again, and so they were in a dilemma similar to what we're facing. So they came up with, again, a bold mindset. They said, what I think Cass County residents really want, they said, let's give their community the best law enforcement in the region. Not just get by, not just have the Yugo to drive by. Let's have that Ford F-150 or 250 pickup truck as our model to drive. Or you can see a Chevy too if you want. But and they're obviously competing with Oakland County, St. Clair County, Genesee, Tuscola, Sanilac. Some of those much larger, some of them about the same size. So they put it to the voters. They again, obviously put a lot of work into this, as if we do this here in Cass County, the sheriff and myself, and I'm sure others, would have to put a lot of work in this. And I've done this once before, 20 years ago, when we did the CDET village, and that's what I spent my summer doing. But again, it's important for our community, and it's worth doing. And law enforcement is generally liked by the community. And here's what happened in LeBear County. You know, those of you that have been involved in elections before, that's a landslide, 59 to 41%. That's a really wide margin to win an election by. Maybe not be the biggest landslide, but it is in the category of a landslide. The money, 83% went to the sheriff, 17% went to the prosecutor. Those are things, obviously, that can be discussed and worked out as we move forward if we decide to go this way. They no longer have their staffing issues. You know, John Miller, their prosecutor, talked with great pride. They're getting top-grade personnel, and they're giving the citizens what they want, which, again, is high-quality public safety. One of the good things about this is, and again, I won't talk about it too much because I know I've taken up a lot of your time, but there's no negative impact on the county general fund. As a matter of fact, you're taking two of the biggest gobblers out of that, the prosecutor's office and also the sheriff's department. You know, again, you don't have to worry about having to constantly them coming to the trough asking for more money and so forth, because that part of it is taken care of. So these are my recommendations, and Mary, maybe if you could help me out a little bit. I just, as I conclude here, there's, for class comp recommendations, and there may be, if you could pass those out to the commissioners, Mary, thank you. And then I think there'll be some left for some of the folks in the audience too. I think there's really basically three things that we should do. One is I think it's the time, like I said, is now. I think we should pass and provide funding, an RFP, I think is referred to, at our next board meeting, that we agree to fund a class comp study. And I think it would be money well spent. I think secondly, it would be important to set up a committee forthwith that would have a very short timeline to decide what will be the objectives of the comp study, including, I think, talking about what we discussed earlier about the possibility of a creative compensation. And third, set the objective of having the class comp study completed by the date of November 1st of this year, which again will dovetail with the other recommendations. Mary, if I could show your support again too. In the second, on the law enforcement village recommendation, I would encourage the setting up of a exploratory committee, which would include the sheriff, myself, somebody from the administrator's office, the county commissioner representative, with the following objectives. One, to study, and again, the numbering is a little bit off on that, but on the screen in front of you, it's two, but on the handout that you have, it's number one. Study the Lapeer County millage. Number two would be establish some specific objectives. Number three, interact with the county public to be assured that this is what they would want to do. Really a little bit of quick exploratory work, which the sheriff I know did back with Sheriff Underwood back in the day of the initiation of the CDET millage. Also establish the recommended amount, and also vigorously consider and pursue the idea of putting this on the ballot for August or November of this year. And I'm certainly willing to commit my time throughout the balance of this year to make sure that this is a success. I did it the first time, and again, we had a similar success rate on that. So we move to conclusion. If you, Vice Chair Barrera, and if you would allow, I think that some of the other electeds may want to just speak briefly on this. It's obviously we're at your pleasure in that regard, but I know that they may have a little bit of commentary.
I've got a question before we
Yes.
get into that.
Sure.
Man. So I'm really confused because that is a good caveat to what you just said. You started with the prosecutor's office, then you went to the county-wide, then back to the prosecutor's office, then back to the county-wide elected official, then back to the prosecutor's office, now having the rest of the elected officials speak. Which one are we talking about? Are we talking about your office only, or are we talking about the whole county except for the sheriff, because we're working on his now. So everybody except for the sheriff. Or are we including him too? What are we talking about?
We're talking about what I said at the beginning. We're talking about both. And again, obviously, I'm talking about the prosecutor's office primarily because that's my office. But again, as I said, I think there's two things that should be done. One, and I'll take them in reverse order now. One is the law enforcement millage, which would be just for the sheriff and the prosecutor. That's what that would entail. But also that we, at the same time, would explore a class comp study.
For the whole, everybody
Yes,
else?
correct.
All right, now I'm on.
Gentlemen, let's
Yeah.
take a break. Let's take a second here, catch our breath. We know that there was a lot of information that was presented, and I understand that these meetings can get long, but first I want to just thank you for even coming here today and giving us this presentation, because I know that you and I have discussed on this subject before. And my recommendation was to come to the committee of the whole and bring your discussion to the rest of the board, so that the whole board takes its responsibility to acknowledge the problem and discuss it, not just with you, but anyone else that's interested party in this. So again, I know it was kind of a long presentation, but I think it was necessary that we have it. And so again, thank you for coming and putting this together. A lot of good information that was shared here. I mean, I'm not gonna try to speak for anybody on the board, but I know that there's a lot we gotta digest here, so, I'm willing and able if everyone else is. So if anyone has any questions, concerns.
I still do.
Yeah. Go
So,
ahead.
the millage, if we do the millage for you and the sheriff department, then we can also do later on for the class comp study. Is that what he's saying?
Class comp would be like an out-of-pocket.
Would be something afterwards.
Yeah.
So
But actually, it would be prior to, he wants to try to get that done.
get that done first, because I asked Monica while you were doing we can get that millage on the ballot now to where it don't cost us no money.
Yeah, so we could, if you all wanted to proceed with that, the deadline to put anything on the August ballot would be May 14th.
So do we need to have a committee for that?
I think the things that you want to discuss in the committee, and the sheriff may want to weigh in on this too, because he's been in the process as well before, but you need to come up with the language. You also need to go to equalization to determine how much money you want. Obviously, I think the sheriff and I can come up with those numbers from our respective departments and so forth, and then present that to you, but, and I think.
Figure out what happens with CEDA too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would just note, I am happy to help serve on any committee and talk about this. I mean, in fact, I've had some discussions about, my thoughts on needing to look at something like this too, so I would love to help.
Sure, yeah. And then I think the other question is, do we do it in August or do we do it in November?
That's a big question,
Yeah.
I think, because,
August, if you can.
I prefer August,
You would
but again, that's
prefer
just a.
August?
If you can get it on
well,
August.
that,
would be August.
there's kind of a time crunch there, because May 14th.
I do, Sheriff, I don't know what your thoughts are. It will take some work, but again, I think it can be done.
I would say we pump the brakes and figure out what we're doing with CEDA, if CEDA's gonna be reviewed or pursued or not. And then we ask the question to the county attorney if we can just rewrite some of the language in the CEDA millage and change the name before we do a bunch of extra work for no reason.
And again, I don't think you have to decide tonight whether it's August or November, but I do think there is some sense in setting that committee up to answer some of the questions Ryan had and others.
I'll happily serve on it.
I will too. So you have three.
So
think, yeah,
definitely a lot of ideas out there right now.
Maybe we should do it as a whole.
Well, Ryan, to your point, I think that could be part of the process in terms of.
I'll make a motion to start a committee if I have to, so we can get the ball rolling. Second.
I'm sorry, just a committee for.
I'm making a motion to start a committee to pursue potential new millage.
New millage.
Well,
Or
let's
expansion of the
make it
existing.
definitive for law enforcement and prosecutors, so somebody doesn't think we're creating villages for all kinds of things.
I thought it was for the clerk.
Not anymore, I already made a definition.
Okay, Okay, so we have a motion and it's been supported. Is there any discussion on that motion?
How many people,
Yeah.
who do we want to serve on it? How
I
many
think three of
people?
us raised our hand.
I was interested too.
We can have four.
We can have four.
And then we should consider some elected officials.
Sheriff, prosecutor for sure, Matt and Jen.
Do we decide the members now or at the BLC meeting?
I would say if we decide it now, then we can push it to the meeting to vote on formally.
We got a
That's fine
short,
with everybody.
we got a short window to get
Yeah, we gotta.
everything
Get the
set.
committee set up for
Yeah.
our
Because you said the
next-
cutoff was
May
May
14th.
14th.
May 14th.
Yeah, a month and a half, 2 months.
Who are the members?
We three
Show of hands.
plus Mary.
He asked for show of hands.
And then, we're gonna also include the administrator.
Finance,
Matt.
prosecutor, sheriff.
You should
Does anyone else
also
have any
think
thoughts or
about,
opinions?
I'm sorry, including Tammy Stewart.
Yes.
Equalization, that's a good idea, thank you.
And then we're definitely probably gonna have Carl somewhat wrapped in it.
Yeah, I mean, he'll
At least
absolutely.
take care of it on your end.
Yep.
Any further discussion?
Yes, I want to make a comment.
As far as other members, I think the names that have been mentioned are more than sufficient, so.
I appreciate the fact that you just didn't come and ask for money, you have a plan.
Yes, thank you.
That's important.
And we're fortunate that there's a model out there that we can follow. And
Yes,
that I think,
exactly.
as well as the experience Cass County has had on it, so
Yeah.
we know a little bit about what this is about, so. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys listening to Roseanne.
I would speak on, like, with the class count. I know we completed that, it would have been,
We can't talk about that yet, Matt, because we have a motion on
Yeah,
the
we gotta-
floor
we
and
gotta-
support for the,
And
for
then I got
the
something to say about it,
millage.
too.
Thank you. Good
That's
call.
next.
Any other discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, the motion is approved.
Mhm.
Are we adding to the subject then, regarding the class count study?
Yeah, that's
It's
gonna
like
be
two
separate.
separate things.
That's
Two
separate.
separate things, yeah,
'Cause
Yeah,
That's
we can still
separate.
talk about that.
Yeah.
it's two separate
I
things.
was gonna say, I mean, I think,
And I want to make a comment about it too, but you go first.
see, I know that we did that, it was a process that I know resulted in essentially an internal process. It started with an external provider.
Yes.
And I know that Judge Beeler and a few other folks were involved in kind of the picking up the pieces after that fell through. I think that we've noticed that there have been some challenges we've noticed. I mean, I've even wondered sometimes with the criteria, does it actually make sense with some of the things? Like, I mean, a good example is one grade difference applies if you have a master's degree or a doctorate. Does that really make sense? So are we looking at the right criteria? I'm not opposed to that. The one thing I would say though is I don't think it's possible to pass and provide funding necessarily until you've done an RFP.
I agree.
I mean, I think you have to do the
I
RFP, get
agree.
proposals, and then decide on the proposals, what do we want to do? I mean, I think that would also be a good gauge to figure out what are we looking at in terms of cost and time.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't be opposed to just trying to look at that at least and see what that is, but I think funding is maybe getting ahead of the game a little.
Judge?
I think that's what we, at least those of us others that had talked with Victor, we didn't want to come to you and ask for money for our class count tonight. We wanted to ask for like a plan to set up a committee to develop an RFP that we could then bring to the Board of Commissioners
Yeah.
for consideration. Because I've seen RFPs that deal with some of these flexible and, packages that look at other things that could be done lawfully. And then there are companies that could provide that service.
Yeah.
And so if we ask for an RFP and then nobody responds, then I guess we'll know they don't do that. But we have seen in other sectors that they have. So, because our class comp, when we did the RFP before, was very limited. We said we basically wanted them to replicate what we had done in 2009, I think it was.
Yeah, I think so.
And we use the same parameters, and I think we're really limiting ourselves if we do that. What I would love is if we could have a committee that would look at what would we put in that RFP, and then if we don't get any takers, we don't, but at least then we have a broader like, you know, dream big, see what we could do to find out how could we attract people better.
Yes.
And then it's not just all about money, and I feel like we lose that
Yep.
even with our employees.
Yep.
I keep hearing people complain because they're making this or making that, but there's a whole compensation package here that includes time off, insurance, other benefits, retirement, court holidays if you're a court employee. So I would really love somebody that is a professional in that field, you know, for us to draft our RFP to seek that kind of advice.
So what kind of committee do we need to do that? We need a motion for a committee to do the RFP?
That's what I am asking for, and I don't know what others think, but that's what we had talked about, because
Right.
we would like to be innovative, and then we could find out.
And then who's the members are gonna be on that one, so we don't skip nobody and be back here
Well, that class
again?
comp would be for everybody we would propose, except for obviously the sheriff's department, because they're not part of the class comp.
Is it necessary to do a committee for RFPs?
Well, that's what they're asking for.
We're asking so that it could be, like, there could
Official.
be more
Yeah,
people
just-
involved.
Yeah.
To set up, if I may, to explore other options than just the pay, the total compensation.
Right.
What I wanted to say was, I like this idea of flexible compensation options, because we could be very creative. You talked about it yourself, being able to hire some young people and being able to hire people who are retired. So I think we need a full-blown professional. The last comp study we did, it was regrettable. It didn't work for us. It really didn't. So I'm in favor of it.
So I'll move that we form a committee to get the RFP going for a class comp study.
I'll support.
Second.
Motion has been made and supported. Is there any further discussion on that
Yes.
matter?
So the members would be administration,
Elected officials.
elected officials except for the sheriff department, and will you be in that class comp study also?
I'm glad to serve if it makes sense.
It would, I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because his
Yeah.
people are in the pay grade.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I get it.
Administrator, finance
Oh,
director, the chair.
I have 7 employees that are non-union, just for the record.
So the sheriff would be included.
So you are included. Yeah, you
Well,
would
y'all-
be included. See, that's a mistake.
So it'll be all elected officials,
Yep.
administration, and administration, that includes Beth, because she has
Yes.
big time input with all of that. And then how many commissioners?
No more than 4.
No more than 4.
I'll be on.
Well, well, that can be just,
Oh,
yeah.
I don't get included on.
We can
Yeah.
finalize it here and then vote it through.
Yeah, you're
Then
right,
it's
you're
ready
right,
to go.
you're right.
So
Yeah,
no
yeah.
more than 4. Does
I'll be
anyone
on
have
it.
any interest?
Mary does.
Mary?
I will.
Joyce? You can
I'm
get with-
already on the
Yeah,
one,
you're-
so I.
Is anybody opposed to Jim volunteering for that? If he does, then putting him on it since he's not here.
He gets voluntold.
I'm saying
Yeah.
if he does have interest, we can just add him to it.
Yeah.
He would certainly serve on it, I'm sure.
And I hate to speak out of turn, but I think Jim is interested in that from what he said
Absolutely.
about
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
agree.
yes.
Absolutely.
So Mary, Joyce, and Jim, there's room for one more if someone
Yeah.
else wants.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, well, we got 3 good ones.
All right, there it is.
There it is.
All right, so once again, the motion has been moved and supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, the motion's been approved.
So,
Thank you.
Vic, when I first opened up for clarification with Sam, me and Vic have known each other for a very long time, and we have certain language and certain mannerisms. Please, nobody take offense at my pointed questions to Vic, because he doesn't, and neither do I. So me and him don't need any breathers, because we're good.
Yep.
Me and Vic
Way
are
back.
good.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Thank you, man.
Thank you for the time, and I'll just pass out the packets I mentioned.
Oh, yes, by all means.
Read the,
Yeah, I think that's
particularly the first one.
I just want to make sure that we're having good discussions. Discussions are critical, but it's important.
If there's any left, I'll
Okay.
Thank you, Vic.
Thanks.
Okay, I believe we're reaching our last item on the agenda.
That ain't the last one. We got a closed
Oh,
session.
yeah, right.
Oh,
New business.
opioid settlement plan. opioid settlement.
The last item under new business.
We need order in here. Take conversations out there, except for Judge Peeler.
Opioid settlement funding plan.
If anybody wants copies of our materials, I brought it up for the audience too, because since this is a public type of a endeavor. There's actually two different sets of that, so.
This is well, it's very simple.
So hopefully you all know Bob Weber.
I've been asked if we could just do it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Before we get started, is that
Sure,
okay?
yeah, I'm sorry, you didn't even call us up, I'm sorry.
We'll reconvene
All
at
right,
6:30.
5-minute break.
We're going to go ahead and resume our meeting. Again, we have the opioid settlement funding plan. Judge, please.
Thank you. So Bob Weber from Woodlands, and you all know me. And he's going to go through our PowerPoint with you. I did bring copies of the PowerPoint as well as the plan here in case anybody needs an extra copy. I think we distributed them. So Bob, we're going to be quick because you've already heard a lot of talking tonight. So.
Right. In our situation is a little different because this is there's money to be spent rather than we need money in a different area. So it might be a little different dynamic.
That's a good point, Bob.
Yeah. And those that don't know me, I'm Bob Weber from Woodlands. I'm the director of SUD, Substance Use Disorder Services over here at Woodlands. And as you can see on the committee, there's a lot of folks in this room that are on the committee, so they already know what we're talking about. So it's a good I'll just say there's a good representation there of many stakeholders in the community. Sheriff's there. We got the health department folks there. So a lot of the people who are, in the trenches, so to speak, serving folks that suffer with substance use disorder are present in our committee. All right, and there's some statistics for you all to look at. I think if you watch the news and what have you, you've heard about the opioid crisis. It's been fairly sensationalized in the media, et cetera, but it's real. It's a real situation, and it certainly impacts this community as well as the entire state of Michigan. This slide, this is specific to Woodlands. These are when folks come through our doors for treatment. These are the primary substance that at the diagnosis at intake. As you can see, it's a little small, perhaps. So you see that the alcohol on the far left is usually our number one primary substance of choice when we serve folks here at Woodlands. And then on the flip side, on the other end of the spectrum, on the right is methamphetamine. So you see that it spikes there with methamphetamine. But this is opioid money, and if you see the opioid, it's the second column, if you will, ish from alcohol. Now you notice there, from what we're seeing less folks come through our doors for opioid treatment. That's not that there isn't an opioid problem in the community. A lot of those folks are going to different providers. A lot of those folks are now going to medicated assistant providers such as Cass Family Clinic or Niles Community Health. Mary Middleton, if you know her, of course you do. She's providing that. So that's why there isn't less opioid use in our county. It's just that they're perhaps going to different providers. And I'll say this in terms of the methamphetamine issue, which is very real in this county. A lot of the methamphetamine that you're seeing today is cut with fentanyl. You hear about that, and that's a real situation as well. So the opioids are present even for our folks that suffer with methamphetamine use. And here's just some background. This is the litigation that happened, the lawsuits that happened. So the money's coming from the pharmacies and the makers of the opioids, and so that's some of the large money that's coming to the state. We're not getting that much here in Cass. That was like a trillion.
And so we just included these slides so
Yeah.
you can look at them at your leisure. But, it's expected to bring in, upwards of 800 million in Michigan, and that's a lot of money. So we're excited that we'll get a portion of that. And then there's additional settlements being made, so, we're learning more all the time about those settlements. So these statistics are in here for your review later when you can't sleep tonight.
Yeah.
But we wanted you to be aware of this settlement dashboard, because you can always Google this or go there, and that will tell you information, in real time about what's going on with this. And a lot of you who are real active in MAC. MAC does a great job of getting this information out to you, but we just wanted to make sure that you did know about the dashboard.
And this is from the state, what they've asked us to look at as a kind of prioritizing where this money should go. So that's this priority number one, to save lives, because opioid use disorder does kill folks with overdoses, is very real. So how can we use these monies to help folks save lives? We'll try to use evidence to guide our spending, invest in prevention services for our youth. They want us to look at racial equality. And we do want to be very certain that it's transparent, right? Because there's money here. Let's make sure everyone knows where it's going. And that's what you all are in charge of. So, Yeah.
And so Exhibit E, again, is something that just talks about all the different kind of programming you can do that will fit within the parameters of the settlement money. And there's specific programs for like medication-assisted treatment, syringe programs, all that kind of stuff. So we're not going to go into all that tonight, but we wanted to include it so that you would know, because there's a whole big longer list than we could put on a slide. But we do have considerable discretion in spending the funds to address prevention and remediation of the opioid crisis specific to Cass County. So we wanted to make sure that we emphasize that. Because there is some talk about, you know, the state kind of trying to have some oversight on this, but that wasn't built into the settlements. So that's why we need to develop our own local plan, because Cass County decides what's going to happen with the Cass County money.
Right, and unlike a lot of things, there's not a lot of that oversight, thankfully. So
Right.
we'll have some flexibility.
So we just wanted to, it's not that we're saying we want to use it for a wrong purpose, but we also don't want Lansing telling us how to spend it. If there's initiatives in Cass County that you all feel are important, we should make sure we support those Cass County initiatives. So we spent time with our advisory committee trying to formulate our specific spending plan. And early on, we decided, you know, that we wanted to make sure that we could be agile and that we could prepare a process that we know is going to change over time. And so that's why this would be a plan that we're proposing go to the next BOC meeting for your approval, and we would roll it out. Then in future years, you might update this plan, you might add to it, you might add committee members. It would be something that could be agile and adapted.
Right, and hopefully easy, so the money can get to where it needs to go, rather than it be, you know, held up with red tape.
Because we didn't want this to be like some of the federal grants where you look at the application and it's 198 pages long and you don't even want to apply for the money. So that was important to our committee. So our recommendations are found in the plan itself, but we basically just kind of put them in bullet points here. And hopefully that all made sense. You had a chance to look at it ahead of time. But basically we're looking at having 2 tracks. There would be an emergency track and then a non-emergency track. And we would address these budgets at budget time. And then we would have kind of, you're all familiar with fund balance because we talk about it all the time here at the county. Well, there would be fund balance for these opioid settlement funds. And that would be the pool we'd be pulling from for the emergency type of funding that we would offer. And then, as I said, this would be changing over time. So if you end up getting more money than expected, your plan next year could have higher budgets. I mean, there's nothing locked into this. And we would keep our committee going and just go every year on a cycle with the fiscal year, elect a new chair and vice chair. Right now, I'm the chair and Bob's the vice chair. Next year, it could be somebody different. And we filled in those positions to be part of the review of the application process. And tried to keep it simple with admin basically taking the lead on a lot of it because our finance director is on the committee and our county administrator, but also having these other partners because we want to keep kind of a pulse on things to make sure if the health department tells us, oh, there's these crises going on, that we can make sure that we encourage people to apply for these funds. Because the worst thing is to have these funds and not spend them because, you know, we know there are needs, so.
Absolutely.
So, do you have any questions?
With the slide that said racial equality, how was that even tracked and why is it even tracked? Because shouldn't that be confidential? And nobody should really know. If you're an opioid, if you need the services, it doesn't matter what color you are.
Yeah,
or who
I
you
think
are.
what it's getting at more is the literature says that there have been different racial impact in terms of, especially not so much here in Cass County, but especially in urban areas. There have been populations more impacted than others based on racial lines.
Right, and historically, maybe they haven't accessed services in those poverty areas or there's lack of services available in like bigger cities in some
And so say,
areas.
for example, you had a clinic here that was in the heart of, you know, where there were no poor people or, you know, there was no people of color there, and then somebody wanted to build a clinic somewhere that was more centrally located.
Right.
They could say, well, we're trying to bring some racial equality here because that way everybody can come to the clinic.
So that really don't affect us because we're gonna be central and it's not individual, it's based on.
Yeah, it's not that we're saying that plans have to tell us, you know, specific people. They're serving.
That was part of the state requirement.
Yeah, it was state.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
It was part of the
Part of
state
the state.
requirement.
So maybe they can just, if I had any frustration still, they could relay that back to the state.
It was actually not the state that mandated, that was part of the settlement with the lawsuit.
Right.
And then the state adopted that.
I get it.
But, you know, as you can imagine, in some states like New York City, like, there's different racial impact than maybe
get it.
in our kind of a
Just not
situation.
here.
Right, access to treatment, typically in larger urban areas.
So it don't affect us.
Not really here, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
The percentage of consideration for that portion was pretty low compared to the others. I mean, they
Yeah.
still want you to consider it, but the percentage that was required was only half.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess our plug to you is we would just like, you know, this plan to go forward with the understanding that obviously over time, you all may have different ideas. Matt and Jen may come and say, hey, this isn't working, this isn't working. We would change it up. And then we would, kind of like when we first started our indigent defense many, many years ago, we had a different plan for that and it's evolved over time, so.
I'm happy to move it forward. I'll make the motion.
Second.
Go.
Okay, so we have a motion, it's been supported. Any further discussion on the subject?
Thanks
All
for
those-
presenting.
Thank
All those
you.
in favor
Thanks,
say
Bob.
aye.
Aye.
All right.
All opposed?
Good
Thanks.
job.
Motion carries.
Good job.
Great work.
Thank you.
Good one. We moved that forward, like, with the.
Sorry, I jumped in on there.
You're on the committee.
Well, and I don't want to say, have the state advisory committee.
I entertain a motion to enter into a closed session to
I move-
discuss M-024-24 regarding the February 9th.
Point of order.
Hey, we're still in session here.
I'll start over. I'll entertain a motion to enter into a closed session to discuss M-024-24 regarding the February 9th confidential written legal opinion from the county's legal counsel, which is subject to attorney-client privilege, and to include County Administrator Newton, Finance Director Renfro, and Clerk Register McMichael.
I'll make that motion.
Support.
Second.
The motion has been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Nope. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The
Oh.
motion's been approved.
We need a roll call.
Sorry.
Commissioner Marquetti?
Yes.
Commissioner Leyland?
Yes.
Vice Chair Barrera?
Yes.
Chair Jones?
Yep.
Commissioner Howie?
Yes.
Commissioner Locke?
Yes.
And Commissioner Lee?
Yes.
Sorry, Jerry.